congressional lawmakers still haven't reached a deal on coronavirus relief, but we're learning more about how hard Republicans have been fighting to essentially nickel and dime ordinary Americans, while at the same time doing what they can to provide what's being referred to as double dipping in tax cuts for the wealthy. So let's start off with Republican Senator John Thune, who's worried about Americans getting both direct checks and unemployment. He thinks, these people might be living too high off the hog. We can't do that. Now remember, the direct checks will be about $600. That's where they stand with the negotiations right now. Just a one-time $600 check, and the unemployment benefits would be $300 a week for 14 weeks. That was scaled back from 16 weeks. Now, this is what John Thune says about that. There could be language in the deal aimed at addressing concerns that people who receive both enhanced unemployment benefits and stimulus checks would be getting a double benefit. Okay, we're talking about 8 million Americans who have fallen into poverty since last summer. We're talking about people who owe thousands and thousands of dollars in back rent, which will come due as soon as the moratorium expires. And this guy is crying about a one-time $600 check. It's the most infuriating thing. And by the way, Bernie Sanders doesn't even accept the legislation as it's being proposed now, which includes a $600 check and the $300 a week in unemployment. And he has leverage. I'll explain that in just a second, but Cenk, jump in.
Yeah, guys, if you see us, especially me, beating up on Democratic leadership in the media constantly, there's a good reason for that. Because this case is super easy to make. So it's infuriating that no one outside of Bernie Sanders and the Just Democrats makes the case. Democratic leadership unilaterally surrenders every time. So this is in a lot of ways old school politics. So the Republicans say, I don't want the average American to have as much money, but I want businesses to be able to double dip. We'll explain that in a second, right? So they say for the average American, unemployment checks, I don't want it to be 600, I wanted to cut it in half, 300. The $1,200 check, we wanted it to be zero, but now we're getting some populist concern from our right wing, from people like Josh Hawley. So, okay, since one of them is gonna run for president, we'll make it 600. But again, cut it in half, maybe, okay? Otherwise it's zero. And unemployment, we don't want it to go for 4 months, we want it to go for 3 months. So at every turn, they attack the average American. Now, if you have a competent party on the other side, you would hate the policy, but you would welcome the politics. You would say, you wanna hit Americans when they're down. I mean, you can't give me a bigger political gift. I'll go and just absolutely butcher you politically on that. They cut their payments in half, and then corporations' payments are doubled, as we're gonna explain in a little bit. So go ahead, John Thune, explain why you wanna double the advantage for corporations and you wanna cut the advantage for average Americans by half. Explain it, just explain it. Have you ever seen Democratic leadership do any of that? No, in fact, they do the exact opposite. They made the deal with Thune and other Republicans. So they then turn around and go, Thune is right, we got to cut for the average Americans. Dick Durbin is out there kissing their ass 24/7. You know what, he gave a speech on the floor of the Senate today. He's the number 2 Democrat in the Senate. Congratulations to Trump administration on Operation Warp Speed. It was a tremendous success, he said. You're calling Trump a tremendous success while they call you child molesters. This is what I'm talking about, guys. The Democratic leadership is total, utter incompetence. It would be so easy to beat these Republicans if you didn't have a bunch of losers on the other side.
No, I mean, you're 100% right, especially with how they've handled these negotiations, because there is leverage, and the leverage is very clear right now. So specifically, Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader, who has been an obstacle in these negotiations, had a call with Senate lawmakers, GOP lawmakers, and realized, turns out that Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, who are facing re-election races in Georgia, are getting hounded about the lack of direct checks. They're getting hounded by it because guess what? even Republican constituents, Republican voters. Doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter what your political ideology is. Again, more and more Americans are falling into poverty during this pandemic. They need help. They need help. So these two Republican candidates desperately want to get reelected. They're being hounded for direct checks. And finally, Mitch McConnell admits to Senate Republicans, okay, I guess we need to have direct checks to Americans. Okay, great. And so Bernie Sanders jumps in and says, you know what? $600, not enough. And he's right, $600 is not enough. A one-time check of $600 is just not even close to enough when you consider the reality of the economic situation for most Americans. Now, I'm gonna skip ahead to the second video here. Here's Bernie Sanders making the case for why Americans need more in these direct checks. Let's watch.
This bill, in my view, does not go anywhere near far enough in terms of addressing our crises. And I hope that as soon as the Biden administration comes into office, they will address those deficiencies. Now, a week ago, 10 days ago, nobody here was talking about the need for direct payments, help for working families, despite the fact that that is the issue, the program that the American people most wanted. The proposal, as I understand it, provides for a direct payment of $600. That is half of what I wanted, but it is a step forward, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that we come as close to that $1,200 as we possibly can.
So again, understand that after McConnell was open for direct checks, Democrats also conceded on shortening the amount of time people can be on the federally subsidized unemployment. It was 16 weeks. They agreed to go back to 14 weeks. And so if it's $300 a week, I mean, think about it. It does cancel out with the direct check to Americans. But and I want Bernie to keep fighting. But it's a difficult balancing act because people are understandably desperate for relief right now. And so at this point, people are willing to take anything. But considering the fact that there is some leverage here for Senate Democrats, I think they should push a little harder and get a little more relief to Americans as soon as possible.
So let me easily destroy the Democratic talking point about, well, no, but you guys don't understand. There's purple states and we have to win in those states. Wait a minute, people in Montana and Alabama and West Virginia don't want direct checks. They'd rather have you double the payments to corporations. Really show me that poll. And that's why I get mad at the media. There's not a single reporter in Washington that says, hey, Democrats, you keep saying you have to work with the Republicans because of red states. Can you show me one piece of evidence? It's a Trump-like assertion that they don't want direct checks in West Virginia. It's not true. It's not remotely true. It's a total and utter lie that the Democratic leadership does on behalf of Republicans. That is unbelievable, and no reporter notices it. So look, and Anna's right. It's now empirical. The Republican voters in Georgia are demanding the direct checks so much that the Republican candidates are saying, we got to do some direct checks. So Dick Durbin, what happened? And Georgia's not even a red state anymore. But the Democratic voters in Georgia want it. The Republican voters in Georgia wants it. So who doesn't want it? Oh, your donors. But God forbid anybody in mainstream media should ask them about that. And then one more thing about that. Look, mainstream media also hates fighting. They say, we prefer civility. Civility is wonderful. No. Fighting isn't just a vent. It's not because you're frustrated. It's not because you don't know how to strategize. Fighting is political. It is strategy. So Bernie Sanders begins this fight and says, no, if there's no direct checks, I'm voting no. Now, what does that do? It puts Josh Hawley in a bad spot because Josh Hawley's trying to be a populist from the right wing side, and he's gonna run in 2024. He immediately recognizes that's good politics, and he goes, oh yeah, me too. Yeah, I also want direct checks. Now all of a sudden it's bipartisan. Then the people of Georgia start putting pressure because they realize it's possible that they might get direct checks. They start putting pressure on the Republican candidates. And now all of a sudden we went from 0 to maybe $600 in direct checks, thanks to who? Bernie Sanders. Why? Because he started a fight. The fight wasn't to vent, it was strategic. Now, how many reporters have acknowledged that obviously true fact? Almost none.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because if you happen to come across the interview that Wolf Blitzer did with Bernie Sanders just yesterday, Wolf Blitzer was essentially urging Bernie Sanders to accept a deal as soon as possible. You know, you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, something along those lines. He said it like during the interview. So I get the pressure because time is of the essence. People are incredibly desperate right now. But at the same time, it is important to use the leverage that they have to demand more. And they certainly do have this leverage because Senate Republicans don't want to lose control of the Senate. And so they want to do whatever it takes to help Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue here. So Democrats should use that to their advantage. One final thing, I know we're running out of time, but one final thing I wanted to add is what Republicans actually are fighting for in this relief bill. They actually want to provide like a double dipping tax cut benefit for the wealthy. And so I'm gonna go to Lee Fong's reporting over at The Intercept. He did a fantastic job with this story. He said one of the revisions in the legislation is a subtle yet radical change that would result in a major windfall for the highest income Americans and large corporations. The bill provides that businesses claiming expenses reimbursed by PPP forgivable loans, which are already tax-free, can be further used as deductions when calculating taxable income. In other words, the change would allow a corporation that claimed $1 million in PPP reimbursements to apply that money as a deduction on its tax return, reducing taxable income by $1 million. It's so egregious and so disgusting that even Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, okay, a man who had no problem, working for a bank that was committing fraud in order to wrongfully foreclose on people, he thinks that this goes too far, okay? He says the money coming in from PPP is not taxable. So if the money that's coming is not taxable, you can't double dip. You can't say you're going to get deductions for workers that you didn't pay for. But guess what? Even so, as Lee Fong reports, a growing chorus of lawmakers has demanded that businesses should be able to deduct tax-free PPP money. The demand has been pushed by the most senior lawmakers on the tax writing committees, Representative Richard Neal, and of course, Senator Chuck Grassley as well. God, Richie Neal is a disaster, absolute disaster, such an embarrassment.
No, Anna, don't ever let Richie Neal be criticized based on his donors. The mainstream media will get mad at you. They'll say, no, that is a beloved, honorable Democratic leader. And so I'm sure that he has everyone's best interest in mind when he allows businesses to double dip, but not average Americans. When he helps Republicans do that, even though he's the head of the Ways and Means Committee for the Democrats, the most important committee in the House because it controls the money. So the bipartisan agreement to screw us all on behalf of their donors is infuriating. So now, look, PPP is a good law. I've talked about that a lot in the past. And so there's nothing wrong with PPP. Now, they put in there that the loans, first of all, the loans are at good rates for small businesses and mid-sized businesses. And then they could also be forgiven. Okay, that's great. That's extra help to small businesses who desperately need it. But if your loans are forgiven, why do you need a deduction on it as a cost? It's literally not a cost. The government gave you the money and said you can keep it. How's that a cost? Okay, you say, you know what? It's not, but we're just trying to help all businesses. So, small and mid-sized business. So go ahead and keep the money and do a tax deduction. Now that's billions upon billions of dollars in double dipping, but we're trying to help the economy. Okay, fine, no problem. But then you can't turn around and say, American workers are gonna get an extra $300 for unemployment. No, that's double dipping. We can't send them the direct checks and the unemployment checks. Now, a couple $100 for an average person? No, the average person doesn't donate to us at all. No, that's double dipping. They're bums. They're bums looking for a handout. Next thing you know, we're gonna be communists. Corporations wanna double dip. Oh yeah, of course, right away, sir. I don't even know why they're single dipping, let alone double dipping. I like the relief. I just don't know why it would be considered a cost. It just makes no sense at all.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. I really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.